At 74, Lillian still dances barefoot in her kitchen, humming as the kettle sings. Her mornings begin with light stretching, a whispered prayer of gratitude, and watering her lavender rituals she calls her daily stitches of peace. She wasn't always this vibrant. There were years clouded by grief, aches, and doubt. But she chose different small shifts, quiet habits that changed everything. What if 5 simple habits could add 10 more joyful years to your life? Let's begin with the first, and it starts with the morning light. Lillian opens her eyes at 6:45, not to an alarm clock, but to sunlight brushing the edges of her bedroom curtain. For the last 14 months, this moment has been sacred. 10 minutes. That's all she gives herself before anything else. 10 minutes to sit by the east-facing window, warm her hands on her tea mug, and let the morning light settle her soul. She calls it her solar reset. It began as a curiosity, an article tucked inside her church bulletin about circadian health. She didn't expect it to change her life, but it did. Research now shows that even modest exposure to natural morning light can regulate hormones, improve sleep quality, support immune function, and protect mental sharpness, especially for adults over 70. It's not about chasing youth, it's about anchoring your body to the rhythm of time, in a world that often feels disjointed. Lillian's ritual is simple, calming, and healing, and it began in a moment not unlike your own, the quiet realization that something had to shift. Before that shift, Lillian's mornings were fog. She'd wake groggy, no matter how early she went to bed. Her shoulders ached before she stood. Her thoughts felt cluttered, half-formed memories, unfinished plans, forgotten names. She blamed aging, as many do. It's just what happens, she told herself. She stopped making breakfast. Her garden sat untended. The once treasured ritual of writing to her granddaughter faded. She felt emotionally underwater, functional, but never fully awake. The days blurred. Then came a quiet scare. She forgot her neighbor's name, someone she'd known for 20 years. It frightened her enough to speak to her doctor, who gently asked about her sleep and routine. That's when the phrase, light hygiene, came up for the first time. Lillian didn't know her body still had a clock, one tied not to time, but to light. It was the first time she considered that maybe her heaviness had a cause, and that cause might have a solution. A simple one, so she made one decision. Every morning, for 10 minutes, she'd greet the sun. The habit that gave her back the day. At first it felt silly. She sat bundled in a blanket by the window, blinking toward the light like a confused cat. Some days were cloudy, some were rainy, but she showed up anyway. Her goal wasn't perfection, it was presence. She started with her favorite chair near the east window. On warmer days, she'd step outside with her tea. No phone, no chores, just her breath, her body, and the glow of natural light. The first few weeks, she felt nothing. No magic, no miracle. But slowly something shifted. Her sleep deepened. She stopped waking at 2 a.m. with racing thoughts. She noticed fewer headaches. Her thoughts, once foggy and scattered, became clearer. Within a month, she was waking with more energy. She began keeping a small notebook beside her mug, jotting thoughts as they came, not deep journaling, just whispers of her inner voice waking up again. She didn't realize how much light she'd been missing. Not just outside, but inside. And all it took was 10 minutes of quiet consistency. Not everyone has a garden or a sun-drenched kitchen, but this habit isn't about location, it's about intention. Here's how Lillian made it work, and how you can. 2. Choose a time, not a feeling. Lillian didn't wait until she felt ready. She picked 7 a.m. and honored it, even on cloudy days. Pick your own time and show up, no matter your mood. Find your light spot, a chair near a window, a seat on the porch, or even standing by the doorway with your eyes open and relaxed. You don't need direct sun, just natural morning light. Anchor it to a routine. Lillian paired her light time with her tea. You might choose breakfast, prayer, or music. The habit sticks better when it's tied to something comforting. Stay screen-free. This moment isn't for emails or scrolling, it's for light, stillness, and presence. Track how you feel. Lillian didn't keep data, just notes. Slept better, felt steady. Over time, those notes built hope. These small details made her habit feel doable, not daunting, and they helped it last. Lillian didn't just regain her energy, she reclaimed her mornings. For years the day had started in silence, not peace. Now, the stillness feels sacred. Her body feels anchored, her emotions more grounded. The morning light gave her something she hadn't expected, permission to begin again. Each day, no matter the aches, no matter the noise of the world, she had one ritual that centered her, that told her, you are here, you are alive, you are becoming still. Her relationships began to feel lighter too. With more energy, she began calling her granddaughter again. She tended to her garden. She made simple breakfasts. Her neighbors noticed. Her voice sounded brighter on the phone, not loud, but clear. What changed most was her sense of time. No longer chasing minutes or battling the clock, she felt like time met her where she was, in that quiet glow, in the gentle return of clarity. For Lillian, one small shift changed the way every day began, and it began with this: the light found her, and she let it. Lillian's mornings had changed, no longer clouded by mental fog or fatigue. Her days began with light, intention, and steadiness. That single habit, 10 minutes of quiet natural light, anchored her energy and gently returned her to herself. But energy is only one part of vitality. Emotional clarity, too, requires nurturing. As her body began to feel stronger, Lillian noticed something unexpected. Even on good days, she still went to bed uneasy. Her thoughts looped through what hadn't gone right: a missed call, a pile of laundry, an old memory. Sleep came slower, and often without peace. She began to realize that her mind wasn't resting with her body, it was rehearsing old worries. Morning light gave her presence. Now she needed to close the day with perspective. And that's where her next habit began. Not with action, but reflection. She didn't need a therapist, or even a journal. What she needed was a shift, a gentle turning of her attention from what was missing to what was still there. 2. The habit of noticing. The first night she tried it, she whispered them out loud. My hands didn't hurt this morning. Sarah waved from across the lane, and the bread didn't burn. That was it. She didn't write them down, she didn't analyze them. She simply noticed 3 good things. Nothing fancy, nothing forced. It felt awkward at first, like she was pretending to be positive, but the act of naming them, speaking them into her quiet bedroom, planted something deeper than optimism. It gave weight to the good. Not just the loud joys, but the soft, often overlooked ones. Within 2 weeks, she began remembering more. A funny moment with her neighbor, a song on the radio, a memory from 1968 that surfaced while folding socks. Some nights, she listed 4 or 5 things. Some nights, just 1, and that was okay too. What surprised her wasn't how many good things she had, but how often she'd been missing them. This tiny habit rewired the way she looked at her life, not through the lens of decline, but of richness. Lillian had always kept photos in drawers, snapshots of a life lived richly, if imperfectly, but over the years, she found it harder to recall specific details, specific days. Time seemed to blur, especially in moments of loneliness. This habit, naming 3 good things each night, did something unexpected. It sharpened her memory. She began remembering when Sarah waved, what dress she was wearing, the feeling of breeze when she opened the window. Not only did it bring her joy, it brought her clarity. Scientists call it positive recall bias, a fancy way of saying your brain, when trained gently, will look for what's working instead of what's wrong. And over time, that shift creates real changes in how we think, how we remember, and how we feel. Lillian didn't know the science, but she knew that when she closed her eyes at night with 3 good thoughts instead of 3 worries, she slept deeper, her dreams felt lighter, And slowly her relationship with her own past, her own aging, began to heal. She wasn't rewriting her story, she was just noticing the golden threads that were always there. Consistency came quietly. Lillian didn't use a notebook at first, just her voice. But soon, she bought a small fabric-covered notepad from the market. Nothing fancy. 3 lines a night. She kept it beside her bed with a pen. No pressure, just presence. To make it stick, she paired it with her evening tea. After brushing her teeth and dimming the lamp, she'd sit up against her pillow, sip slowly, and write her 3 things. Even on hard days, she found one. Even on dull days, she remembered something. It wasn't a gratitude journal. It was more like a memory net, catching moments before they slipped away. Some days she wrote about the smell of fresh laundry. Some days it was her own courage to walk a bit farther. Some days it was just that she got through the day. This simple ritual became a kind of emotional hygiene. Not a performance, not a list of achievements, just quiet proof that life was still offering beauty, even in small, ordinary portions. Over time, Lillian realized something had softened. Not just her sleep, but her spirit. She began forgiving herself more easily. She stopped replaying conversations from 20 years ago, trying to fix them. She laughed more, really laughed, from the chest. She found herself reaching out again, calling friends, just to share something small. The sparrows are back, or I made carrot soup today. The habit had changed more than her nights. It had changed her days, because now, during the day, she noticed good things as they happened. A smile from the mailman. The weight of a warm mug. Her granddaughter's laugh on voicemail. And in noticing them, she felt alive again. Not just existing, not just enduring, but witnessing. She wasn't chasing happiness. She was honoring it. This small habit had turned her into a collector of grace. And in doing so, it helped her remember something she hadn't felt in a long time, that her life, even now, was still unfolding with meaning. All she had to do was notice. With 2 calming rituals, now a part of her rhythm, greeting the morning light and ending the day with gratitude, Lillian began to notice something deeper, shifting inside her. Her emotions no longer sat so close to the surface. Small frustrations didn't rattle her like they once did. She felt steadier, more herself. These habits had carved out gentle spaces in her day, moments of reflection that softened her past and reoriented her perspective. But as she embraced emotional steadiness, her body called out in quiet ways: stiff joints after dinner, sluggishness after lunch, and that familiar heaviness in her legs that crept in around dusk. It wasn't about fitness. She wasn't chasing energy like in her younger years. What she wanted now was flow. Movement that brought her back into herself, eased the tightness in her body, and carried her thoughts into motion. That's when she added a third practice to her life. One that didn't demand strength, only willingness. One that asked little, but gave back more than she ever expected. Lillian started with the hallway. After her morning tea, instead of sitting right down to read, she paced from kitchen to living room. It wasn't far, 10, maybe 12 steps each way. But it counted. After lunch, she took a slow lap through her small garden path. After dinner, she put on a sweater and stepped onto her front porch, walking in slow ovals across the stones she'd laid down years ago. She set no distance goals. No timers, just a quiet intention. I move because I'm still here. At first, it felt odd. After meals, she'd always gone straight to her chair. Her legs felt heavy, and her knees often stiffened by mid-afternoon. But something surprising happened within the first week. Her digestion eased. She no longer felt bloated after meals. The sluggishness in her body gave way to a kind of lightness, not energy, exactly, but clarity. This wasn't about burning calories. It was about keeping things moving, inside and out. And it reminded her of something vital, that motion didn't belong to youth. It belonged to choice. Within a month, Lillian's walks had become part of the furniture of her day. Not an add-on, a thread, something she expected, like brushing her teeth or turning off the lights. She noticed changes, not dramatic, but unmistakable. Her blood pressure evened out. Her sleep, already deeper, thanks to morning light, became uninterrupted. Her appetite balanced, and she no longer craved sugar at 3 p.m. The act of walking, even briefly, gave her body a message it had longed to hear: you're not being ignored. But more than that, walking helped her thoughts untangle. She began using those post-meal minutes as mental space. Sometimes she replayed conversations, sorting her feelings. Sometimes she let her mind wander. She found that while her feet moved slowly, her emotions moved freely. It wasn't exercise. It was expression. Each walk told her aging didn't have to mean shrinking into stillness. It could mean moving forward, even slowly, even carefully, with curiosity. It gave her body a voice again. And in listening, she felt less like someone managing time, and more like someone savoring it. Lillian's world was small, but her steps made it feel wide again. She found paths that worked for her, not because they were long, but because they felt safe. Inside on rainy days, loops through the living room. Outside, when the sun softened. Sometimes with music. Sometimes with silence. Sometimes just with her breath, and the soft creak of her floorboards. Her routine became simple: after breakfast, 2 hallway laps; after lunch, garden loop, even in slippers; after dinner, porch steps, 5 times, slow and steady. These walks weren't always easy. Some days her hips ached. Some days the sky threatened rain. Some days she just didn't feel like it. But the habit was built on compassion, not pressure. And over time, she realized her pace wasn't something to be frustrated by, it was something to honor. Her pace was earned. Her body, though older, still desired rhythm, and in giving it rhythm, she gave it care. These daily walks didn't make her faster, but they made her present, and in that presence, she found peace that had once felt unreachable. As the weeks unfolded, Lillian began to feel stronger, not in the way she once defined strength, but in a new, quieter way. She felt more stable when she stood up from bed. She no longer clutched the counter while brushing her teeth. Her balance improved, not because she trained for it, but because she trusted her body to move again. Neighbors began to wave more often. She waved back, sometimes joining one for a few steps along the fence line. Her steps became a way of reaching out, not just moving forward. She was still private, still quiet, but now, she was also visible. This strength didn't come from trying harder, it came from listening softer. And walking, after meals, through thresholds, along the same familiar paths, became her way of whispering back to the world. I'm still here, I'm still walking. This habit did more than improve her health. It reconnected her to something deeper, her own agency, her own rhythm, her own path. And all of it began with the smallest step. With her days now bracketed by light, reflection, and gentle movement, Lillian's life had begun to feel whole again. She woke with clarity, moved with care, and slept with peace. The silence in her home no longer echoed painfully. It was a space she had reclaimed, not just physically, but emotionally. Yet something remained quiet, untouched. Not inside her home, but beyond its walls. For all the progress she'd made inwardly, her connections outward still felt distant. Conversations had become occasional, her phone rang less often. The sound of her own voice, once vibrant with daily chatter, felt thinner, like a language she no longer used fluently. Having come this far, Lillian began to notice that vitality isn't just how we feel inside, but how we echo in the lives around us. That's when she made a new commitment, to speak to one person a day, not for purpose, not for productivity, just for presence. Just to feel woven into the world again, and in that choice, her days already brighter, began to open in an entirely new direction. 3. The habit of gentle reconnection. It began small. A good morning to the mail carrier. A wave to her neighbor 2 houses down. A short exchange with the grocery clerk about tomatoes. Nothing planned. Nothing rehearsed. But she did it every day. One interaction. One real voice. One piece of shared space. At first, it felt performative, like she was trying to prove she still mattered. But soon it began to feel natural. These weren't interruptions to her solitude. They were extensions of her being, like little ripples cast outward. She wasn't trying to build friendships or fill a social calendar. She was simply choosing not to disappear, to let her voice live in the world. Some days, it was a phone call to her cousin. Other days, just a comment on a church bulletin board. She found herself smiling more, not for others, but because the world responded. Smiles returned, nods deepened, even short conversations brought unexpected warmth. She had been tending to herself. Now she was learning to tend to the threads between herself and others, delicate, human, and necessary. Within weeks something shifted. Her porch bench, once a place of private reflection, became a quiet invitation. Neighbors began pausing as they passed. Some waved, some stopped to chat. She met a widower named Harold, who walked every morning at 9. Their chats were brief, mostly about weather or shared aches, but they were real. Lillian realized that connection didn't require deep conversation. It only required availability. Once a teenager complimented her scarf. Lillian lit up in a way she hadn't in years. That simple exchange reminded her that recognition, being seen, is a kind of medicine. These daily interactions weren't about solving loneliness. They were about confirming presence. They were proof she still occupied a space in the fabric of things. Her voice no longer cracked from disuse. Her laughter didn't sound strange in her ears. She didn't need long talks or big events. Just daily, living contact. Through this habit, Lillian began to feel less like someone observing the world, and more like someone belonging to it again. Lillian's approach remained simple, one voice a day, but her creativity in how she reached out evolved. Window greetings became part of her morning routine. If someone passed by while she was watering her herbs, she'd wave and say hello. Sunday check-ins with her niece became a light ritual, never forced, always short. Bulletin board replies at the local community center turned into sweet, handwritten notes. Voice messages, even if not answered, let her express herself to people she loved. She never pressured herself to make it profound. Some connections lasted seconds, others grew into something more. She even reconnected with an old friend from Bridge Club, after commenting on her photo online. The key wasn't quantity or depth, it was regularity. Her voice became part of her environment again, and as it did, the walls of her house, once a boundary, became a bridge. She didn't leave the house more often, but she brought the world closer. This ritual became an offering, not just to others, but to the version of herself who once feared becoming invisible. As these daily connections continued, something beautiful happened. Lillian's emotional world began to feel mirrored. The openness she practiced with others began to reflect within. She noticed her own emotions more gently. She forgave herself for moments of impatience. She felt less embarrassed by her tears. Speaking, listening, waving, sharing, they were all forms of being witnessed. And to be witnessed, even briefly, softened the sharpness of isolation. She started to feel threaded again, not just to her community, but to her own story. Her voice was no longer something she saved for emergencies or holidays. It had returned as a tool of joy, of relevance. People remembered her name. They asked about her day. She began bringing small things to share. Fresh lemons, a poem, a newspaper clipping. She wasn't just a woman aging with grace. She was a woman living with voice, living in dialogue with the world, one small exchange at a time, and it made everything else, her light, her gratitude, her walking, feel more connected, more alive. Lillian had come far, from the quiet heaviness of her early mornings, to the soft vibrancy of her current days. Each habit had formed a link in a quiet chain of healing. But this daily connection, had turned that chain into a web, not a web that trapped, but one that held, that reminded her she wasn't alone, that she still mattered. Her movements became more expressive. Her posture lifted, her eyes softened, even her memory felt sharper, because now her days were punctuated by real, shared moments. This habit didn't replace solitude, it made solitude richer, because now when she sat with herself, she didn't feel like the only witness to her life. These small interactions, waves, voices, shared chuckles, stitched her back into something larger than herself, and in doing so, they gave her the most unexpected gift of all, the realization that the quiet parts of her life weren't empty, they were open, ready for the final habit. With these foundational habits in place, Lillian's life had changed, not in dramatic, showy ways, but in deep, sustainable ones. She moved with care, she greeted each day with calm, her thoughts felt clearer, her connections more genuine, her evenings more peaceful, her body no longer whispered of urgency, it spoke of rhythm, yet something inside her yearned for even more space, not for doing, but for being. She had reclaimed motion, voice, light, and gratitude. Now she sensed the need for presence, not scattered through the day, not multitasked, not squeezed between errands, but one moment, one action, done slowly, done deliberately, done not as a task, but as a return. This habit, she would discover, was the quiet thread that wove all the others together, a practice of moving slowly, intentionally, one small act, each day to remind her that life didn't need to be chased, it could be lived, and this final piece of her journey would teach her something even the light hadn't, that joy often waits in the pace we're afraid to trust. 4. The habit of doing one thing slowly. It started with folding a towel, not rushing, not distracted, just folding creased edges, corners aligned, hands moving with attention. She didn't plan it, she just didn't feel like hurrying that day. But in that moment, her breathing slowed, her thoughts quieted, the act felt grounding, like her whole self was in it. The next day, she poured tea slowly, watched the steam rise, listened to the sound, held the cup with both hands. No distractions, just presence. That became her ritual, one act a day, done slowly and intentionally. It didn't matter what, dusting a shelf, brushing her hair, shelling peas, placing photos in an album. There was no rule, no score, but every time she did it, the result was the same, peace. She hadn't realized how much of her day was spent in next, even her thoughts had started to rush ahead, until this habit pulled them back. This wasn't about slowing her life down, it was about joining it fully, with both feet, with both hands, with her breath exactly where she was. The world hadn't changed, the phone still rang, mail still came, people still hurried past her window, but inside Lillian's day, something sacred opened. Deliberate stillness wasn't passive, it was powerful. It reminded her that she could choose the tempo of her time. She could feel her life again, not just mark it with checkboxes. What made this habit so essential wasn't its difficulty, it was its contrast. After decades of caring for others, of managing a home, of navigating grief and responsibility, she realized she had moved through life like a flame, quick flickering, always adjusting. This small daily act became a pause. She gave herself without guilt, a way of saying, you're allowed to be here, fully, not to serve, not to finish, just to be. It also helped her memory, her senses, her clarity, because the slower she moved, the more the details came alive. The scent of her soap, the feel of warm dishwater, the softness of cotton sheets. In slowing down, she didn't fall behind, she caught up with herself. Emotionally, this habit brought a kind of grounding the others had prepared her for, but never fully unlocked. There was something different about the pace of it, not reflective like gratitude, not expressive like conversation, not active like walking. It was inward, it was reverent. Lillian noticed her mind wander less. Her anxiety, once triggered by forgotten names or sudden aches, quieted. She became more patient with herself. Less reactive when the toast burned, less sharp when she misplaced her glasses. It wasn't because she became more positive, it was because she had become present. This daily practice taught her to greet life with softness. She wasn't holding her breath anymore. She was inhaling fully, through action, through awareness. Even others noticed. Her niece once said, "You're glowing lately, like you're rested in your soul." And that was exactly it. This slow habit wasn't flashy, but it nourished her from the inside out. It reminded her that grace doesn't come from getting everything done. It comes from being there for the things that matter, one tiny, quiet act at a time. 5. The habit of measuring time. Lillian used to measure her days in to-do lists, in finished meals, in calls made and tasks crossed off. But now, she measured them in something quieter. She measured her days in presence. That moment she sat with her tea, not thinking of tomorrow. That deep breath she took, while folding a cardigan just right. That pause between cleaning one dish and the next, where she noticed the sunlight on the sink. Time no longer slipped away unnoticed. It held her, gently, and in return, she held her life with care. This habit of slowness didn't mean she gave up ambition or desire. It meant she gave up the race. And what remained was rhythm. Soft, sacred rhythm. Her days no longer felt like something she had to conquer. They felt like something she got to meet, with open hands, open breath, open eyes. It was in those moments that she truly understood. All the habits she'd formed had led her to this presence, without pressure, peace without perfection. And it was enough. It was more than enough. Lillian didn't change her life overnight. She changed it gently, one tiny habit at a time. And so can you. These moments of light, movement, reflection, and connection aren't just routines, they're doorways. Step through them. Your strongest, clearest, most joyful years may still be ahead.